Hello chickies, welcome to the Fully Booked Penguin channel. I am Hannah and today we're doing a little rundown of my history in writing up until now in this episode of the Writing Nook. Now this is going to be a very sit down video, so we're just going to be chatting, or I'm going to be chatting at you. So make sure you grab a drink, some snacks, maybe a colouring book or something. And I'm going to tell you from point A of when I started writing to the now of writing, because it's been a little bit of a journey. Ups and downs, different genres, and where we are today. Setting up for my self-publishing debut later in the year. So now to take you back to the very beginning, once upon a time, a little redhead with 4 brothers and a mother who loved to read to us, I discovered the world of Anne of Green Gables, who, as you may see, is another fellow redhead in the fictional world. And I watched the 2 movies, the Canadian miniseries, just the first 2. We forget that there's any more after that. And this was my life for a little bit. And I loved Anne, of course, because she was redhead, imaginative, and an orphan. No. But from watching the movies, I think it was mainly, but also I just loved reading too, I created my first ever book or story. And it was Hannah of Green Valley. And it was like a historical fiction piece. And I did plan on a sequel as well, where Hannah moved from Prince Edward Island to Australia in search of one of her friends' families. So I had this whole thing set out, and looking back, the writing wasn't great. It was my first attempt at writing a story, and it was a rip-off of Anne of Green Gables. There was a whole incident with the guy at school, and you know, my character had to go to hospital where she met a nurse. That's kind of where it went off the tracks, but originally it was an orphan. She found an old couple and they adopted her, and she got in a fight with a boy at school. She ended up injured and going to hospital, and the rest unfolded from there. But yeah, that was my first little innocent little story, and it did change from like first run through to like second run through. But it was amusing. It was definitely not really fan fiction, but it heavily inspired by, let's say. And then I was really interested in, again, still in my fan fiction writing era, I really loved the Enid Blyton mysteries. I loved a good little mystery with little sidekicks, but I took a spin on that. I made, because we had all these plushies. Wait, I have one of the plushies. So me and my brothers had these plushies, and this is Buster, and he was a character in the book, and there was Fido, which was Fido, it was a doll, not Fido, who was a girl, by the way, and then we had some others, and our family dog was in there, and they were crime-solving dogs. As dogs, they had like a meeting house and everything, so very Secret 7 almost thing. So they had a clubhouse. They went and they just stumbled across a mystery and they solved the mystery. And I think I wrote 2 or so books in that series. So that was more still inspired by middle grade mysteries. But it was a twist. It was animals. It was dogs solving the mysteries. So I did that. And then we got on to what I called the Supers series. And it followed a group of young superheroes who were in the real world. They went to go visit their aunt and uncle, and the parents decided to tell this story to the youngsters about this superhero land and how they helped, you know, solve this battle that was going on. Then book 2 came along, and the kids discovered that this world and this story all happened. It was all from a fictional world, so they ended up traveling with the parents to this other world, and again solved another thing with their superhero powers. So there was like a girl with ice powers, there was this guy called J-Veg, and he was plant powers, and he was heavily inspired by Terrence from Tinkerbell. I love that character, so it did turn into my character, but different, of course. Like, my character was black-haired, green-eyed, nothing to do with Terrence other than an acorn cap. And so they came to life as their own little series, and I'm not sure, I'd have to check how many books, but I think it was at least 5 books in that series that I wrote. And one Christmas, my brother was like, oh, I have a surprise for you, and I got really hyped up because I swear he's, like, my brothers were saying, oh, he's going to publish your books for you, as in the super series for you. I got Narnia that Christmas, like the omnibus of Narnia, which, you know, is great, but it was not my books published. But I think that was when I really wanted to start publishing my own books. Keep in mind, I am still a child at this point. They were not, you know, groundbreaking stories. They had some depth to them, even back then, but they were superhero stories with just humour and random things happening all over the place. However, from there, as I grew up and was still developing my stories, I came up with a side story for the super series. But this short story compilation it was going to follow different people. And so I started writing the very first short story. And let's just say that story became very long for a short story. Then names changed. The world changed from a world with superpowers to a world with no magic. It was a non-magical fantasy world. And so I began developing that. I never finished that story. Instead, I started a blog. My plan was to blog write and then have this other main story developing in the background. And the blog had different, like, novella stories in it that I published randomly because I can't keep a schedule, and there were, I think, 3 stories on there that I had ideas for, I had the plot in my head, and that I wrote a chapter of, each a questionable amount of time. And these stories on the blog were fantasy, D&D inspired, like elves and dwarves and battles and wars, and that was where most of my time ended up going. So my little story that originated in the Supers land and it became something of its own and then got dropped pretty much. And yet I still tried to keep on top of this new world, which was very fantasy D&D. Now I do plan on finishing those stories someday because the idea is solid. It's just I have to write it and decide if I truly want it in this land, in this way, or whether I make something new. Oh, well, we shall see. We'll see when I get inspiration for that series again. But yeah, a lot of my time was spent on that. And during that time, sort of near the end, I was still publishing those things on my blog, but I decided to go and study writing and editing, get a diploma. And so I left home, packed myself up, and set out to pursue a more professional line of this writing editing world. So in 2017, this is why I have yet to finish a story I started, like of a novel length, by 2017. So I was 21 at the time. I was yet to finish writing a book. And I can tell you, it was not for lack of ideas. I had too many ideas. I think that's where I went a little astray. But the ideas were still mulling over in my head. I just was not writing it down other than this D&D inspired storyline. And then I went to school. And I don't know, I feel like study is a dual-edged sword, because in one aspect, if you're really stressed and you have a hard time at it, you forget most of it because our brains are wired to forget things. And unfortunately, my brain, it was a traumatic time. I had a lot of stuff going on in life and juggling things and trying to stay on top of things and keep my mental health intact, and I was struggling. So a lot of my schooling, my diploma, blur. It is a total blur. I have not a clue. Other than the very major trauma, it's all a blur. But I did learn some things, but I think in the process it murdered my will to write. You go there to learn how to write and edit, and it destroyed any urge I had to write. To be fair, I did get published in an anthology collection, so that was a good experience. It was nice to see people appreciate my work. They were more short story fiction. It was very real world. It was very inspired by war and more darker themes because I was depressed at the time, and that was all my poor tired little brain could deal with, was darker themes. It really came through my writing. I still added a twist of hope on them. There was always that hopeful element, but it was dark for me. I'm not a dark writer, but for me it was pretty serious. And then when I reached home after my year plunge into getting my diploma, which I passed with flying colours, don't ask me how. I'm a good worker, but at the same time there was a lot going on that year. And so I reached home, went straight back into working because you have to make a living. You have to provide a roof over your head, rent, all those things. They don't stop. And so I fell into work. And instead of writing, because my brain was so tired from work, and really, I was probably already in the initial section of my chronic illness, I could do zero thinking about writing. But I did start streaming. And so in my streamer days, my gamer girl days, I streamed different games like Fire Emblem and dating games and just D&D sessions and things like that. And I loved that time. It was so much fun. I was not a big streamer, okay? I barely got many numbers other than my best friends showing up. But I did stream and I did love it because even that time is a blur because work was stressful. I was in the lead up to discovering I had a chronic illness, and I was streaming, and just all of the pain, it's blurred the whole thing. So now I watch back some of the videos I managed to save from that era of my life. The humor dripping off me during that time, I watch it back and I laugh so much because I was so witty when it came to reading a story, and then I would add on to the story. I would act as the character, I would read out their line, and then I would continue on. And with Fire Emblem, I bantered, I was interactive, and I was like, wow, what an amazingly depressed but hilarious time of my life that was. So I kind of miss streaming, but my computer is a bomb, so I need to get a new computer if I was to stream again. Plus, focusing on like booktube and writing. Booktube and author is probably enough, but I can combine streaming with booktube with writing sprints and stuff. I know that, but at the same time, I miss that. I think part of me thinks that I'm not funny anymore, that I've lost that spark, but I suspect that if I were to do the similar thing, if I were to stream, I would be equally as funny. But it's a part that you look back and you romanticize in your head. Not the rest of it, the rest of life, but the humor of streaming. And so that was another section of my life, which was the non-writing section, because I was working, streaming, and all that sort of stuff. Now we get into discovering that I was chronically ill. So I had to quit my job due to I would work in the morning as a barista, which the workplace was not good, and then I would come home, immediately sleep. And so I would get home either at 2:30, or if I had like just a short shift, like 11ish, and I would just sleep because I had zero energy. I would get severe chest pain. Just so much of my body was just broken down. But at the time, I was just running on adrenaline, and I would keep going to work, keep showing up at that workplace. And eventually it reached a breaking point. I said, I have to leave this place or it will kill me. And I did. But unfortunately, due to me stopping, or fortunately, then all the symptoms that had been down here, there, but not destroying me because adrenaline was keeping me up. Once the adrenaline stopped, I was not well. I was already not well, but I realized how unwell I was. And so did other people around me, because I could no longer do anything. I was in bed. I could barely shower. I was like, this is too much effort to do. And it was not good fun. Anyway, I won't go too far into the chronic illness, but it was tough. And so for years, I could barely do anything. I had a constant brain fog. I was in survival mode at that point. And so there was no writing happening during that time either. Which brings us to more recently. I decided I wanted to sit down and finish my book, then revise my book. And because I'm horrible with time is just a big wibbly wobbly time mass, I don't know when I finished that anymore. I should have noted it down, but at the start of this year, definitely, I finished the final draft before I'm ready to send it to an editor of that first book that started as the Supers book with, you know, superpowers and became a non-magical young adult fantasy. So it is going to the editor for a proofread. I have an artist for the book cover set up, and it's all go towards publishing that book. But then I also started book 2 in that series, so still the non-magical fantasy, and I am going to finish that draft, the first draft of book 2, which I started early this year as well. Was it February or something? I'm going to be writing the last chapter of the first draft today. I would never have imagined that, because the first book took years and it began as one thing, ended as a completely different, beloved thing. But then I wrote this one in, 6 or so months to finish the first draft. And to be fair, I have had several books in this series in mind while I was writing book 1. I had all these ideas mulling around because it is a series. I knew how they all connected, how it was going to go, and how it's ultimately going to wrap up in a final book. But, you know, things change along the way. But yeah, so I'm going to finish that first draft. So really my journey was from fiction genre to mystery genre to superpowers, superhero books, to elven, dwarven fantasy, to non-magical fantasy. And that journey has been all over the place. As I say, not every journey is, oh, I suddenly had the idea of becoming a writer and then it's slowly smoothed out. Sometimes we have breaks of years in there, and unfortunately I did have many breaks in there. But it taught me a lot. And as I told my mum, I think writing book 1 at the age I was last year, like this older age, like doing the rewrite, rejig, actually helped the story, because the story it was in the beginning and even at the halfway point is so different from what it is now at the end. It's got more depth. There's like different things because I've grown as a writer and, you know, person as well. So I think I love that it was now Hannah doing the writing and the publishing rather than past Hannah. And same as with these other things, I think I had to go through life in order to get the material and the knowledge and inspiration for the books now, to be publishing it at the age I am now. Not to say old me wouldn't have been so happy to have her books published. I mean, young 12-year-old or less than 12-year-old me would have loved to have the Supers published. But that dream isn't going to happen for young Hannah. But this dream of having a section, characters from the Supers, come to life now as a non-magical fantasy, like I'm living her dream. Maybe doesn't look like her dream because, I mean, chronically ill, can barely do much but get in these little chunks of writing each week. But I'm happy. I'm happy with what I've achieved, and again, finishing book 2 in such, like, 6 months. What? Start of this year, Hannah would never have thought she could do it because she thought a chapter a week will be a struggle, and then current Hannah was doing a couple of chapters a week. When the, words flowed, she also had crashes and shouldn't have done that much writing, probably. But she is now ready to publish book 1. She's all set up. She's got book 2, first draft done. Lay that aside so she can, I don't know why I'm talking about myself in third person, but she can now focus on all the publishing stuff of book 1, which will be revealed shortly. I think at the end of September, I will be doing a reveal of the book that is coming out in December, Lord willing. I'm saying December because that gives me plenty of time to get a new computer, to get new software, to sit down and write the dedication and that sort of thing. I have the blurb, don't worry, I'm on top of that. But write out these different things, set up my author website, and make sure I'm all legally, know all the rundown of what I need to do legally, and have it set in place, ready to go, ready to announce this this thing that has grown so much to the world. So I'm excited, but I'm also exhausted trying to think of all the things I have to do. But compared to the young girl who was writing pretty much fan fiction with a different name of Anne of Green Gables, to current me, where every idea is unique and comes to me without doing any retellings or anything, is I can see where the Lord has blessed my journey, because let's admit, this brain was created by a higher power, and thank goodness for that, because he's gifted me with this creative blessing, and I needed it in order to survive this chronic illness, being stuck at home, not able to do the usual things that people out in the big wide world say you should, because my body does not allow me those things. But God has blessed me with a brain that can achieve these things that are important and, I guess, fulfilling for me. And I hope that by stretching my creative skills, even though it's not Christian fantasy or anything, I hope that the Lord blesses someone through that. And at the very least, he's blessed me and my family through it. So yeah, non-magical fantasy series is coming to you from me. I will be announcing my author name because, surprise, surprise, it's not going to be Fully Booked Penguin or just Hannah. I'm going to be releasing the name of the series, the name of the first book, the whole thing behind what this first book that I've been teasing and working on for years. And it's now coming to fruition. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, this was a rambling little chatty video. I set out with zero stuff in mind. This is completely off the cuff. I had no dot points, nothing. So now I'm going to go write the final chapter of book 2 in the series for the first draft. There'll be a lot of edits, but first draft will be down. And yeah, I'm excited, and I hope I can gather some people to be excited with me too. Or if you're on your own beginning journey, I hope this video finds you and we can be on this new little journey together. So until next time, I wish you the best in your writing, reading life, and I shall see you in the next video. Until then, peace.
226